Hi YouTube. I want to talk about the social model of disability today and why it really isn't the evil that people think it is. For those of you who don't know, the social model of disability is that disability isn't related so much to what's physically or neurologically wrong with you. It's created by society. Now, in the care industry where I work, it's looked down upon because it's seen as an excuse to take away the welfare state. It's seen as an excuse to force disabled people into work which they're not suitable for. Well, the welfare state is going to be taken away. There's nothing we can do about that. Bitcoin means that people won't be paying taxes in the future. Governments will cease to exist. We've got to accept the end of the welfare state. But the social model isn't about that only. It can be interpreted in a different way. Let's take a very mild disability like dysgraphia, which sounds scary, but all it means is bad handwriting. Now, that might be a disability where in an era when we had to handwrite CVs and essays and proposals, anything like that. But with keyboards, why is that a disability anymore? I've got terrible handwriting. What does it matter? All my CVs and essays have been typed. Let's take another one, a very common one, dyslexia, that affects 1 in 10 people. In a pre-literate society, why would that be a disability? But in a literate one, it would be. On the other hand, voice-to-text technology should mean that if they can speak coherently, they shouldn't need to spell anymore. So, socially, these things can be disabilities. Depending on how society treats them, depending on the level of technology, depending on the allowances. And then, I work with a lot of people from the third world. About half the workforce in the care industry is made up of immigrants because the pay is so rubbish. And they always say, especially with our African service users, they always say, oh, he wouldn't be in a day centre if he was back home. He'd be lifting heavy loads in exchange for food. When I raised this with one of the managers, they said, well, most of the work in the third world is sweatshops, so we don't want that to happen. Well, I'd say nearly all jobs in the third world would be considered sweatshop jobs for us. Does that mean that they're worse than being unemployed? I would say any form of work is better than unemployment. And I've only been unemployed for 4 months, and that's horrible enough. The people I work with are bored stiff. Can't overestimate. That's the number one reason for challenging behaviour with the mentally disabled: boredom. In the third world, there is no welfare state. Their families can't afford to feed them, so they have to get jobs. To use my favourite metaphor, they're pushed in at the deep end. It might be scary to start with, but they learn. Learning difficulties doesn't mean obtuse. Very few people I've worked with are obtuse. So, what balance can we get? Well, I believe dyslexia, autism, OCD, schizophrenia, I do believe they're neurological. I don't think they're made up. I'm sure there are some people who pretend to be disabled to get favours, but they're a tiny minority. I don't think ADHD is made up because there are physical symptoms. Sedatives make them high and stimulants make them low. But I do believe that the disability is caused socially. That doesn't necessarily mean it's their fault. It doesn't necessarily mean that all disabled people are lazy, but it does mean that it isn't caused by the underlying problem. And I know this is true because there is no correlation with the people I work with, severely autistics. Just because one of them is more severely autistic than the other doesn't mean that they're more disabled. There's no correlation between the level of autism and the level of disability. Hope I get lots of comments on this, because this is an emotive topic and it's been raised in the Telegraph and in disability now with totally opposing viewpoints. But to believe in a social model of disability does not mean that you don't care about the disabled people. That's all I've got to say for now. See you later, YouTube. Bye bye.